My only argument with a football player being the greatest athlete of all time.
53 members of the team?
Is that, no, not even that, Jesse, is that they only got to play one side of the floor, man.
That's a good point. That's a legitimate
argument. Brady is unbelievable. Brady is the greatest quarterback I ever seen.
That's a great point.
But he affects the game one way. And that's by throwing the ball. And it's great.
You're right.
And it's great.
He doesn't affect the game one way.
Brady can play 22 years.
Ronnie, it doesn't affect the game one way.
He can play 22 years, but he don't have to worry about certain things.
It is your sport. You don't have to play defense or play the other side.
Bron, he doesn't affect the game one way.
This as a basketball player and the pounding that you take and running both sides. Okay, now I got to do offense. Oh, I got to get back on defense. Oh, I got to get back on offense. Oh, I got to get back on defense. And you know, as physical as football is, and I know it's to the body, I know it's crazy to the body, but for a quarterback, Belichick has done a great job of implementing those five guys in front to protect that asset. Every Sunday.
Right. That's the best.
So Belichick, that's not Brady. Belichick's not recruiting or looking, scouting those linemen, bringing in, you know, all those guys. For us, every single night, like, you have to, like, you got to know both sides. Like, you know, we both play football. You play football. Rich played football. Uncle, he played football. The offense never even talked to the defense all week. We don't even speak to y'all.
Different teams.
It's two different teams. It's three different teams. Special teams. When I played football, offensively, I never even talked to the defensive side.
That's the truth.
I never even talked to y'all. Ain't nothing to talk about. And I'm sitting down, chilling. I'm sitting down like this on the bench. Oh, turn over. Oh, where's my helmet? I don't even know what my helmet is. You grabbing a chin strap. Come on, man. You remember that? LeBron.
This is CJ with the GOAT Sports Talk. Just, of course, you've seen the video earlier with LeBron James discussing in the barbershop, which was a series, I guess, done on ESPN. You'll see Draymond Green in there. I believe that was recorded not around this time of the year. It might have been last year that might have been recorded, or sometime maybe possibly during the season. But it was actually just going over what they would consider the greatest athletes. Now, of course, you know, LeBron being a person who played both football and basketball, he has some expertise in it. Of course, he didn't play it at a higher level, you know, such as maybe like a big time, you know, NCAA conference, you know, where he could have probably, you know, measured up athletically what would be considered the GOAT. But he did play some in high school. He was all-state wide receiver in the state of Ohio, which is no slouch in football. And then he's also, of course, you know, he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. So he does have a little bit of say-so on the subject. You know, I've played myself personally all three sports growing up, soccer, you know, some basketball, and football a little bit. You know, I played a lot of soccer when I was younger, a lot of basketball, just like most kids do. Whether you played on a team or not, a lot of people do play basketball and some football. But, you know, one thing I do notice, as far as, you know, one thing you can test out of who's a greater athlete, and it just depends on what category someone's talking about. Of course, if you're talking about strength, you're probably talking about football, but then you also got to look at position, because not all football players are as strong as they look. When you look at like different metrics, like the bench press at 225, squats and things like that, because it just depends on the position. But one thing you will notice in basketball, as far as with all other sports, you know, and probably including hockey as well, is that the lack of hamstring tears. Okay, and that's one thing that I talked about with my old man. We actually had this discussion probably a few weeks ago about what we felt was the hardest sport, you know, as far as physically or demanding to do. Now, we're just talking about team sports. We're not talking about boxing. We're not talking about tennis. We understand that. We're not talking about long distance running. But when you're talking about running and jumping sports, the most athletic pound for pound are definitely basketball players. Their conditioning is even better as well. I mean, running up and down and jumping requires a lot of energy. Now, LeBron's argument was that on both sides, they had to basically pay attention to both sides. Like, imagine if basketball players on every set could sit out 5 players and put their best defensive players on the floor and then do the same thing on offense. Like, that would be completely different. You know, that would be something that would be crazy. But that's not what happens in basketball. So he is right on that degree. That really, when you examine it, they do have to do a lot. And, position wise, maybe if you're talking about position, then that's another thing, Now, for example, one would consider Deion Sanders to be one of the greatest athletes that ever played football, right? So Deion Sanders is not known for his strength. So you could probably say that Deion Sanders' athletic ability would have been on the level of a very fast athlete such as an Allen Iverson. Now, I don't know about a Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook, as far as jumping with quickness and speed, is if you're talking about just straight end-to-end speed, Russell Westbrook has to be probably, almost, if not as fast as a Deion Sanders. I mean, I don't think anybody has seen a guy move like him. And there's been a lot of quick players in the NBA. Now, when you're talking about leaping and jumping, Westbrook is going to have that over Deion Sanders. Strength, they probably a toss-up because Deion Sanders was not really a guy that was a big weight room guy. He more just did speed work and that type of training, did a lot of one-on-one coverage work with receivers to, keep his skills going. But he's easily regarded as probably the most athletic player to ever play in the NFL. Now, you do got other guys that are very athletic. You got, Barry Sanders. You got different wide receivers, if you're talking about guys like Calvin Johnson. But Calvin Johnson's athleticism is pretty much on the level of like you're talking about a LeBron James in his prime type of player. Tall, athletic, big. And, a lot of these very big-time athletes in football, in the NFL, a lot of them played basketball. I mean, it just so happens that a lot of them also mixed up with basketball as well. I mean, if you're talking about even going down into quarterbacks or wide receivers, a lot of the more athletic ones were known to be very good high school football players. I give you a prime example. You got Julius Peppers. Julius Peppers played basketball at UNC. He was a very good basketball player in high school, and he's still a very effective football player in the NFL, and he's going to be a future Hall of Famer, first ballot. I mean, if you look at how many guys that played basketball that are Hall of Famers, it's ridiculous. Chris Carter was another one. In fact, Chris Carter's brother, he played in the NBA, and Chris Carter played basketball in high school, and Chris Carter's a Hall of Famer. Let's go to Randy Moss. Randy Moss played basketball in high school. Easily could have played basketball in college, D1, anywhere. And he's also a first ballot Hall of Famer as well. One of the greatest wide receivers of all time. So when you start looking at different guys that played in the NFL, Antonio Gonzalez, first ballot Hall of Famer. One of the greatest football players of all time, probably easily the greatest tight end of all time, was also known to have played football over at Berkeley. Basketball at Berkeley as well. So when you start looking at it, it's leaning in the favor that the GOAT athletes probably do come from the sport of basketball. And last but not least, let's bring up Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was an amazing athlete, big hands, very strong. If you look at a clip online, you'll see Michael Jordan throwing a football about 60 yards, okay? So, we're talking about a guy that was easily considered one of the best running and jumping athletes, not just talking about hand-eye coordination. We're not even talking about that yet. We're not even talking about footwork, So, basketball is probably the greatest, probably will produce pound for pound the greatest athletes. We could talk about soccer as well. Soccer has some great athletes as well. But, my old man having, grown up playing a lot of soccer growing up and, playing some tennis and, probably dabbled. I know a few of my relatives from where he grew up dabbled in some boxing as well. And then I have a cousin that played, professional basketball. So we have some athletes in our family. And from what I've seen, it just seems just like my old man said, from knowing a lot of different people in our family that have played sports, even at the professional level, it appears that we both came to an agreement that it was about a month ago that basketball players are probably the most athletic and the best conditioned athletes we've seen in team sports. So, pretty much just wrap it up right there. And just hopefully y'all enjoyed this. Again, man, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. This is the GOAT Sports Talk. We're here to bring you unbiased opinions. Of course, you're allowed to have your own opinion, but one thing we will do is we'll make sure to just be, straight up and down with our listeners, and hopefully giving you some of the best independent commentary in sports. And as this channel begins to grow, you're going to see some new things You know, so just continue to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. You know, be active on the comment board. We definitely would like to, you know, go back and forth and have a friendly discussion, you know, about sports. So again, wrapping up, this is CJ with the GOAT Sports Talk. Y'all have a wonderful evening.